One decision, one rainy morning, one pregnant stranger stranded on the side of the road. Caleb Rivers had no idea that stopping to help would cost him everything. His job, his security, his daughter's future. But what he didn't know was that the woman he saved wasn't just anyone. She was about to turn his world upside down in ways he never saw coming. The windshield wipers on Caleb Rivers' aging Honda Civic fought a losing battle against the October downpour. Sheets of rain hammered the glass, turning downtown Atlanta into a blur of gray and steel. His watch read 7:42 a.m., 18 minutes. That's all he had to get to Vanguard Dynamics before Howard Briggs, his supervisor, made good on his final warning. Caleb's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he merged onto the boulevard. His mind raced with the same anxious thoughts that had been circling since he woke up. Late twice in 3 weeks. Howard's red face, the way he'd pointed at the clock like it was evidence in a trial. One more time, Rivers. One more time and you're done. The job at Vanguard was everything. Health insurance for Lila. Stability after 2 years of barely keeping their heads above water. A chance to finally breathe after Serena's death had left them financially devastated and emotionally hollow. Through the curtain of rain, something caught his eye. Hazard lights blinking orange against the gray morning. A silver Mercedes pulled over on the shoulder, hood up, steam rising into the cold air. And beside it, a woman, pregnant visibly, heavily pregnant. One hand pressed against her belly, the other holding a phone to her ear. She wore a simple dress, completely inappropriate for this weather, soaked through. Her shoulders were hunched against the rain, her dark brown face twisted with distress. Caleb's foot moved toward the gas pedal. Keep driving. You can't afford this. Not today. But she shifted, turning slightly. And the way she touched her stomach, protective, desperate, it hit him like a punch to the chest. Serena, 7 years ago, standing in their tiny apartment bathroom, hand on her own growing belly, eyes bright with joy and terror. His car slowed, then stopped. Caleb grabbed his umbrella from the back seat and stepped into the downpour. The cold rain immediately found every gap in his jacket. "Ma'am," he called out, jogging toward her. "Are you okay?" The woman turned, revealing delicate features and brown eyes wide with worry. Up close, she looked young, early 30s maybe. But there was something in her expression that spoke of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. Her natural hair was pulled back in a bun that was coming undone in the rain, water streaming down her face. "My car just died," she said, her voice shaking. "And this rain?" She winced, placing both hands on her belly. "I called roadside assistance. They said 45 minutes. 45 minutes in this weather, in her condition. Caleb didn't hesitate. "Here," he said, holding the umbrella over her. "Please sit in my car where it's warm." "You shouldn't be standing out here." She hesitated, studying his face with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading his entire life story in a single glance. "I don't even know you." "Caleb Rivers," he said gently, his dark skin glistening with rain. "I work at Vanguard Dynamics. Started 3 weeks ago in logistics. I have a daughter, 8 years old. I know how important it is to stay safe when you're pregnant." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, but the beginning of it. She nodded and let him guide her to his car. Once inside, Caleb cranked up the heat and handed her some napkins from the glove compartment. His watch read 7:51 a.m., 9 minutes. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier now. She dabbed at her wet face with the napkins. "I'm Naomi. When are you due?" Caleb asked, trying to keep his voice calm, even as his mind screamed about the minutes ticking away. 6 weeks, Naomi replied, unconsciously rubbing her belly. I was heading to a prenatal appointment when this happened. Caleb noticed the worry lines around her eyes, the way her free hand trembled slightly. First child? She nodded, and a shadow crossed her face. Yes. I've been really careful, maybe too careful. Taking time off work, following every guideline to the letter, and then this happens. Cars break down, Caleb said softly. It's not a sign of anything. You're doing everything right. Naomi looked at him for a long moment. You're kind. Your wife must appreciate that. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb's chest tightened. My wife passed away 2 years ago. Heart condition, rare, sudden. He cleared his throat. It's just me and Lila now. Naomi's expression shifted to genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry. That must be incredibly difficult. We manage. Lila's strong. Stronger than I was at her age. They sat in silence for a moment, rain drumming on the roof. Caleb checked his watch again. 8:02 a.m. His stomach dropped. You should go, Naomi said, noticing the gesture. You're late for work. I'll be fine here. No, Caleb said firmly. I'm not leaving a pregnant woman stranded in this weather. My supervisor will have to understand. But even as he said it, he knew Howard Briggs wouldn't understand. Naomi studied him again, and this time there was something different in her gaze. Curiosity, maybe even respect. Tell me about Lila, she said quietly. Caleb felt himself relax slightly. She's amazing, smart as a whip, wants to be a scientist. She has this science fair coming up Thursday, building a volcano that actually erupts. She's been working on it for weeks, very secretive about the whole thing. She sounds wonderful. She is. And for a moment, Caleb forgot about the time, forgot about Howard Briggs. The minutes crawled by. Naomi talked about her pregnancy journey, though Caleb noticed she kept things vague, never mentioning a partner. There was a loneliness in her words that he recognized. When the tow truck finally arrived 33 minutes later, Caleb helped transfer Naomi's things and made sure she had a safe ride. Thank you, Naomi said, squeezing his hand, her dark eyes intense. Not many people would have stopped, especially when they're late for work. Take care of yourself and that little one, Caleb replied. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Naomi stood there, one hand on her belly, watching his car disappear. Caleb arrived at Vanguard Dynamics at 8:47 a.m., his clothes plastered to his body. Water dripped from his hair onto the polished lobby floor. Howard Briggs was waiting by his desk, arms crossed, face the color of a ripe tomato. Rivers. The word came out like a curse. My office. Now. Caleb's stomach turned to ice. He followed Howard down the hallway, past the curious stares of his co-workers. Howard's office was small and cramped, smelling of stale coffee. He didn't sit down. 47 minutes late, Howard said. 47 minutes. Howard, I can explain. I don't want to hear it. Howard's voice was cold. I warned you twice. You think the rules don't apply to you? There was a pregnant woman stranded in the rain. I couldn't just leave her there. Howard laughed. Actually laughed. A pregnant woman. That's your excuse? You planning to stop for all of them? She was in distress. I don't care. You have a job. You have responsibilities. He reached for a manila folder. 3 strikes, you're out. Pack your desk. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. Howard, please. My daughter. Should have thought about your daughter before you decided to play Good Samaritan. The next 10 minutes passed in a fog. Caleb packed his items. A photo of Lila, a coffee mug she'd decorated, a small plant. His co-workers pretended not to watch. When Caleb walked out, the sun was trying to break through. It felt like a cruel joke. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, trying to figure out how to tell Lila. The next 2 days were brutal. Caleb sent out 17 applications, had phone interviews that went nowhere. Lila knew something was wrong. Her small face creased with worry. I'm fine, sweetheart, he lied. Just a little tired. Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. A well-dressed black woman in her 50s stood on his porch, holding an envelope. Mr. Caleb Rivers? Yes. I'm Monica Ellis from Vanguard Dynamics Human Resources. May I come in? She sat on his worn couch, placing the envelope on the coffee table. Mr. Rivers, our CEO has personally reviewed your termination and found it completely unacceptable. Caleb blinked. I'm sorry, what? Ms. Vance is ordering your immediate reinstatement with back pay. Additionally, she'd like to offer you a position as her executive assistant. The words made no sense. The CEO? But how would she even know about me? Monica smiled. Ms. Vance has her ways. She's particularly interested in employees who demonstrate exceptional character. I don't understand. The position comes with a significant salary increase and comprehensive benefits. Health insurance, dental, vision, educational stipend for dependents. Educational stipend for Lila. I still don't understand why. You will, Monica said. Monday morning, 9 a.m., executive floor. Miss Vance will explain everything. After she left, Caleb stared at the envelope. Inside were documents, a new contract, a salary that made his eyes water. Who was Naomi Vance? And how did she know about him? Monday morning arrived. Caleb stood adjusting his tie. Lila appeared, her coiled hair in perfect puffballs. You look nice, Daddy. Are we going to be okay now? The question broke his heart and mended it. Yeah, Lila Bug. We're going to be okay. The executive floor was polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta's skyline. The receptionist stood immediately. Mr. Rivers, Miss Vance is expecting you. Caleb's heart hammered as he walked down the hallway lined with contemporary art. He stepped inside the stunning office. Ms. Vance. The chair swiveled slowly, and Caleb's world tilted. It was Naomi, but not the vulnerable woman he'd helped. This was Naomi Vance, CEO, composed and powerful in an elegant black suit. Hello, Caleb, she said softly, her brown skin glowing. Surprise. But you were on maternity leave. Yes. Naomi stood slowly, one hand on her belly. Doctor's orders. But after you helped me, I couldn't shake this feeling. I came back that evening and asked about the kind logistics coordinator who'd risked being late. Imagine my surprise when I discovered Howard Briggs had fired you. Caleb sank into a chair. You came back because of a feeling. I've learned to trust my instincts. They built this company. She paused. And they told me you were someone special, someone worth fighting for. Anyone would have stopped. No, they wouldn't. I've run this company for 12 years. 9 times out of 10 people choose themselves. You didn't. You risked your job to help a stranger. I couldn't just leave you there. I know. That's exactly why you're here. The first weeks as Naomi's assistant were a whirlwind. They worked late hours together. Gradually, they began to know each other. Why did you really come back? Caleb asked one evening as they reviewed reports. Naomi paused, her hand on her belly. Being alone with my thoughts was harder than I expected. Work has always been my anchor. But the baby needs you to rest. She looked up sharply, then softened. I know. It's just... this pregnancy, it's complicated. Complicated how? Naomi set down her pen. She was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something in confidence? Of course. I chose to have this child alone, through IVF with donor sperm. There's no father, no partner, just me. Caleb remained silent. I'm 36. I wanted to be a mother more than anything. But I couldn't trust anyone. My college boyfriend stole my thesis work. My ex-fiancé emptied my bank account for gambling. My last relationship, he was married. I didn't know for 2 years. Naomi. So I decided I'd have my baby alone. No risk of heartbreak. Caleb leaned forward. That's not pathetic. That's brave. It takes real courage to choose motherhood alone. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. You're the first person I've told besides my doctor. I'm honored. You're different. You genuinely care about people because it's who you are. Caleb squeezed her hand, and they sat in comfortable silence. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Naomi suddenly gripped her desk, her face contorting in pain. Naomi, something's wrong. The baby. Something's terribly wrong. Caleb grabbed her coat, her emergency bag. He drove with hazard lights flashing. She was only 34 weeks. Too early. It hurts, she kept saying. Something's wrong. We're almost there. Hold on. St. Mercy Medical Center was a flash of automatic doors and urgent voices. Nurses surrounded Naomi. She reached for his hand. Don't leave me, please. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. The next 18 hours were the longest of Caleb's life. Doctors rushed in and out. Placental abruption. The baby was in distress. They needed to operate immediately. Caleb called Monica, who arrived within the hour. He texted his neighbor to get Lila. He drank terrible coffee and watched the clock. At 2:47 a.m., a doctor emerged. Ms. Vance is stable, but the baby was born at 26 ounces. His lungs were severely underdeveloped. He's in the NICU. The next few hours are critical. Caleb found Naomi in recovery, her face swollen from crying. She looked at him, and he saw something break inside her. My baby? Where's my baby? They're taking care of him. He's small, but he's fighting. I want to see him. They wheeled Naomi to the NICU at dawn. The tiny being in the incubator weighed less than 2 pounds. Tubes and wires attached to his impossibly small body. Naomi reached through the port, touching her son's hand. He's so tiny, so perfect. They named him Elias Vance. For 3 hours, he fought harder than anyone thought possible. But at 8:23 a.m., with autumn sunlight streaming through the windows, Elias stopped breathing. The monitors went silent. Naomi's wail echoed through the corridor. Caleb caught her as her legs gave out, and they sank to the floor together. I can't, she sobbed. He was all I had. He was my whole future. I'm here. I've got you. I'm not going anywhere. They stayed on that floor for a long time. Nurses moved around them quietly. Monica arrived again, her own eyes red. But Naomi couldn't move, couldn't do anything but shake and cry. The next days were a nightmare. Naomi refused to eat, refused to leave the hospital. She just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, one hand on her empty belly. Caleb stayed. He brought her water. He sat in silence. He held her hand. "Why are you still here?" she asked on the 10th day, voice hoarse. "Because no one should go through this alone. I chose to be alone." "No, you chose to protect yourself. There's a difference." On the 11th day, Caleb brought Lila. She'd explained everything in age-appropriate terms. But Lila took one look at Naomi's broken face and climbed onto the bed, wrapping her arms around her. "Daddy says your baby went to heaven. My mommy's there too. She'll take care of him until you get there. She's really good at taking care of people." Naomi broke down, but for the first time, the tears seemed cleansing. She held Lila and cried, and Lila just patted her back and hummed a little song Serena used to sing. When Naomi fell asleep, Lila looked up at Caleb. "Is she going to be okay?" "Eventually, but it's going to take time. We'll help her. That's what we do." And they did, day by day. Caleb took a leave of absence. He brought Naomi home when she was ready. He cooked meals she barely touched, sat with her through long nights. Lila visited every day, bringing drawings and funny stories. She showed Naomi her volcano project, made it erupt in Naomi's kitchen. Naomi laughed. Small, barely there, but it was the first time since Elias died. "That's amazing, Lila," Naomi said. And there was something in her eyes, a tiny spark of light. The recovery was measured in small victories. The first day Naomi ate a full meal. The first time she smiled. The first day she got out of bed without Caleb coaxing her. 3 months after Elias's death, Naomi returned to work. Caleb walked with her into Vanguard Dynamics, ready to catch her. But Naomi walked through those doors with her head high, even if her eyes still held shadows. "I need to do this," she told him. "I need to remember who I was before, who I can still be." You're still that person. Grief doesn't erase who you are. Work became her lifeline, but it was different now. She took breaks. She left at reasonable hours. She made time for coffee with Caleb when the weight became too heavy. And slowly, their relationship shifted. Coffee became dinner. Conversations about work became conversations about life, loss, hope. 6 months after Elias's death, they were working late when Naomi set down her pen. "I don't know how to do this. Trust again. Open my heart again." Caleb took her hand. "You start small, one day at a time." "I'm terrified." "I know. I was too after Serena. But Lila needed me to be brave. Maybe we can be brave together." Naomi looked at him for a long time. Then slowly, she leaned forward. The kiss was tentative, careful, full of promise and fear. "I'm broken," she whispered. "We're all broken. But maybe our broken pieces fit together." The next months unfolded slowly. They didn't rush. They had their first date at a small Italian restaurant. Naomi laughed at Caleb's terrible jokes. They told Lila after 3 months. She nodded seriously. "Okay, but you have to promise not to be gross." "Define gross." "Kissing in front of me." "That's gross." "Deal." Naomi said, shaking Lila's hand. There were hard days. Days when Naomi saw a mother with a baby and had to leave. Days when the anniversary of Elias's birth and death approached. Caleb learned when to hold her and when to give her space. And there were beautiful days. Days when they took Lila to the aquarium. Days when Naomi came to Lila's school events and cheered louder than anyone. Days when they cooked dinner together, dancing badly to old music while Lila rolled her eyes. 1 year later, Caleb knew. He'd known for months, but he wanted the moment to be right. He proposed in Naomi's office, the place where they'd spent so many hours building their love. It was evening, the city lights twinkling below. Lila was hiding behind the desk, barely containing giggles. "Naomi Vance," Caleb said on one knee. "A year and a few months ago, you turned my world upside down. You gave me back my job, yes. But more than that, you gave me hope. You showed me that second chances are real, that love can grow, even in grief." Naomi's hand was over her mouth, tears already streaming. "You make me want to be brave. You make me believe in tomorrow. And I want all my tomorrows to be with you." He opened the ring box. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Naomi sobbed. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Lila burst out. She said yes. "Can I be the flower girl?" They laughed, crying and hugging. And through the window, rain began to fall again. Gentle this time. Their wedding was 6 months later, small and perfect. Lila was the flower girl, walking down the aisle with serious concentration. Naomi wore a simple cream dress, her natural hair in elegant twists. Caleb cried when he saw her. Monica Ellis officiated. I've never seen two people more meant for each other. Born from tragedy and built on trust. This is a love worth celebrating. When Caleb kissed his bride, Lila cheered louder than anyone. 2 months later, Naomi took a pregnancy test. Then another, then a third. "Caleb, come here." He found her staring at 3 positive tests. "I'm pregnant, naturally, without IVF, just pregnant." Caleb knelt, taking her hands. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, but also hopeful." "Is that wrong? After Elias?" "It's not wrong. Elias would want you to be happy. I couldn't do this without you. Good thing you don't have to." The pregnancy was closely monitored. Weekly appointments. Naomi was terrified every moment, convinced something would go wrong. But week by week, the baby grew strong. Lila was thrilled. She patted Naomi's growing belly and talked to the baby. "I'll teach you about volcanoes and how to ride a bike and the best way to make Daddy laugh." On another rainy October morning, Naomi went into labor. This time there was no panic, no emergency. Just the natural, beautiful process of bringing new life. Elias Caleb Rivers was born at 6:42 a.m., screaming lustily, his lungs perfect and strong. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Healthy. Perfect. They gave him Elias as a first name, honoring the son Naomi had lost. But this Elias would grow up knowing he was loved, wanted, part of a family built from ashes. Naomi held her son, tears streaming. "He's here. He's really here. He's perfect," Caleb said, one arm around his wife, the other touching his son's tiny hand. Lila peered at her brother with critical eyes. "He's kind of wrinkly." "You were wrinkly too," Caleb informed her. They all laughed, and baby Elias opened his eyes for the first time, looking up at the family that had fought so hard to exist. 3 months later, Naomi and Caleb sat on their couch in Brookhaven. Elias slept in his bassinet, making soft snuffling sounds. Rain fell gently against the windows. "You know what amazes me," Naomi said, her head on Caleb's shoulder. "If my car hadn't broken down that day. If Howard Briggs hadn't been such a jerk," Caleb added. "If I hadn't trusted my instincts and come back to work. If you hadn't been brave enough to let me in." Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. I spent 2 years after Serena died just trying to survive. I never thought I'd feel whole again. Never imagined I could love someone the way I love you. I spent years building walls, convinced I'd be alone forever. And now I know that the risk of love is always worth it. Even with the pain, even with the fear. Because look what we built. Look at our family. Lila appeared, rubbing her eyes. "Can't sleep. Too much thinking." "Come here, Bug," Caleb said, making room. Lila snuggled between them, and Elias chose that moment to wake up. Naomi lifted him from the bassinet, and suddenly they were all there together, a family formed from loss and hope, from trust given carefully and love earned slowly. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Atlanta, washing the streets clean, bringing growth after drought. Inside, surrounded by the people who'd become his whole world, Caleb thought about that October morning 2 years ago, about the choice he'd made to stop, to help, to care. He'd risked everything for a stranger, and in return, he'd gained everything that mattered. The single dad who'd been fired for being late had found more than just a job. He'd found a woman strong enough to rebuild after devastation, brave enough to love after betrayal, and generous enough to make room in her carefully guarded heart for a widower and his daughter. Together, they'd created something neither had thought possible. A second chance at happiness built from the wreckage of their pasts, strong enough to weather whatever storms lay ahead. Because sometimes, on a rainy morning when everything seems lost, one act of kindness can change the entire trajectory of a life. Sometimes the woman you stop to help turns out to be the CEO who owns the company. And sometimes, just sometimes, she turns out to be so much more than that. She turns out to be home.